Did you notice in all the songs Nathaniel led today, there was one word that appeared in all of them? Highlighted in this last song. Take a guess. We're used to singing it, so it probably didn't stand out. That Jesus is Lord. There's so many songs that highlight Jesus as Lord. Lord, reign in me. The word Lord is attributed to Jesus. It's very similar to the idea of a ruler. Even the word master, even though that word has a haunted history in our country's legacy, but in the first century, a master is simply someone that ruled over the household. And Jesus, though, declared himself as Lord. And we're going to see the significance of that today in this last lesson on the importance of believing in Jesus and looking at the evidence for him. Go ahead, Linda, and bring up that first slide. We're going to look today, though, at a lesson with a very unusual title. The title is simply this: Lord, Liar, or Lunatic. And the concept we'll be exploring is why neutrality, and that's neutrality towards Jesus, is simply not an option that he left for us. There are many ideas that people have about who Jesus is, many that are complementary, but they're not satisfactory. They're complementary towards Jesus, but they're not satisfactory. Go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 16. This will be one of a few verses we'll be looking at today to see how important Jesus' identity was to him, and how that if you were going to be a follower of him, if you were going to give your life over to him, you had to see him as who he is, and him being Lord is one of those, and not anything less than Lord. Matthew chapter 16, verse 13, very familiar text where Jesus will press his inner circle on who he is, because his identity was everything to who he is. Verse 13, Matthew 16, it says, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? Here he's referring to himself by this description, Son of Man. They replied, well, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, Jeremiah or one of the prophets. Verse 15, but what about you? He asked, who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. In other words, Jesus is telling Peter, that's the right answer. I am the Messiah, I am the Son of God, and that means everything else that Jesus attributed to himself, that is Lord, King, belongs to him. But notice Jesus wasn't satisfied with just being called one of the major prophets, Jeremiah or Elijah, someone of great prominence. Those would be complementary, and that's why the disciples said, well, some say Jeremiah, Isaiah, or not Isaiah, but Elijah, one of the prophets. That wasn't enough. And anything less than who Jesus actually was simply was not accepted at all. He is the Christ or the Messiah, the Son of the living God. So Jesus' identity was important back then to Jesus, and it's just as important today. In the book of Hebrews, it says Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But we have a problem today that's existed for quite a while, is that there are a lot of complementary assessments of Jesus. And so, here are some of the present day assessments of Jesus that sound good, but they're simply not good. They sound good, but they're not good. Go ahead, Linda, the next one. Some say, well, Jesus, as I hear about you being a Christian, well, he was a good moral teacher. Good moral teacher. Others will say, oh, he's a great man. There's a lot of people that might have a Jesus fish or a Jesus sticker or a little Jesus caricature on their shelf. And they'll talk about Jesus, but they're really not seeing him as Lord of their thoughts or their actions. The Lord simply doesn't reign in them at all, and for sure on Friday night or Saturday night. They just are complimentary of Jesus. Others will say, well, he's one of many great religious teachers. Others will say, well, he's a man whose life and teaching should be modeled. These are all compliments. They're going in the right direction, I guess, but Jesus never accepted any of them. And many times they'll say, well, he's a great teacher, but he's certainly not God. That means he's certainly not in the position of having the right to tell me what to do. The problem is Jesus did not leave room for any of these compliments. Jesus does not want to be complimented by people. He wants to be Lord and Master and Savior of their life because that is his rightful position as a Son of God. And we're going to explore this more this morning to see that he only left, or there only is, I should say, 3 possible options for Jesus. If someone is going to pursue the identity of Jesus seriously, you got to drop all the compliments because there's no place for him. There's only 3 possibilities that are even left to consider. One, that he's just a liar because of what he said. He's a liar, or he's mentally deranged, or he's simply exactly who he claimed to be, the Son of God. There is no neutrality with Jesus. Think about the gear shift on your car. It's either the handle, it might be a push button now with modern cars, but you have the P, which is for park, then you have R for reverse, then you have N for neutral, and then you have, what's the next one? D for drive, and then you might have a 1 or 2 for certain gears. But which one is the one you use the least? Neutral. I tried to think this morning, when's the only time I use neutral? It's in the car wash. When they're telling you put the car in neutral, or else your car is going to do all kinds of things in that car wash you don't want it to do. But neutral simply means you're not going anywhere. But we want to be going somewhere, either frontwards or backwards when we drive a car. We don't want to be in neutral because you're really not going anywhere. And saying Jesus is just a good man or a good teacher or one of many great teachers is simply a neutral position that Jesus did not allow. A man by the name of C.S. Lewis years ago wrote about, here's the limited ideas we have about Jesus. And Josh McDowell, in his great book, Evidence Demands a Verdict, kind of picked up on this. And one of his chapters is entitled, Jesus, Lord, Liar, or Lunatic. But here's what C.S. Lewis, the great writer, wrote years ago about people just being complimentary to Jesus. He said this in his book, Mere Christianity, which is an excellent book. He said, concerning who Jesus is, he says, I'm trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him, which is, I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things that Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher if he's a mere man. That's the point. He would either be a lunatic on the level of a man who says he's a poached egg, or he would be the devil of hell if he wasn't who he claimed to be. C.S. Lewis went on to say, you must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman, or something worse. You can shut him up as a fool, or you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. And that's what Thomas did. But he concludes with this thought, C.S. Lewis, but let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being just a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. Let's look at how far-reaching these statements are about exactly who Jesus is. First of all, let's look at his claims. Here's what Jesus said. A lot of people are just familiar with certain things that they like that Jesus said, like judge not. A lot of people know that. Jesus said don't judge, but they don't really know much else that Jesus said. First of all, he claimed to be God. He went out of his way to say, I and the Father are one. He would say in other places, to know him would be to know God. He constantly connected himself to the Father as being God. To see him was to see God. Let me just read one example here. John chapter 12, verse 45. This is a good representative text of what Jesus was always directing his followers to. John 12, 45, and then 14, verse 9. In John 12, verse 45, I'll begin in verse 44. It says, then Jesus cried out, those who believe in me do not believe in me only, but in the one who sent me. That's the Father. When they look at me, they see the one who sent me. So he says, when you look at me, that means you look at my identity. You're seeing the Father. You're seeing God. And I am the Son of God. They are one. Didn't leave room for any other option other than that he is the Son of God. In 14 verse 1, he says, do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. He constantly aligned himself with the Father. To believe in him was to believe in God. That was his claim. That's what he went around saying. To receive him was to receive God. He even went to the other extreme. To hate him was to hate God. If you hated him, you might as well hate the Father. To honor him was to honor God. That's what Jesus went around saying, and most people are not really familiar with that. He just didn't go around helping people and saying nice things, but he claimed to be God, and there's power to someone claiming to be God because it's very rare. Because if you're going to claim to be God, people are going to expect you to do God-like things or be quiet. But Jesus continued to speak about being God. He also claimed unique and incredible power. Number one, to forgive sin. Who can do that? He claimed to judge the world one day, to give eternal life for whosoever believed in him. He claimed sinlessness himself. That's why he could be our sacrifice. He claimed to be the object of faith. Except you believe in me, you will die in your sins. He claimed to answer prayer. Who can do that? Who can claim, let alone actually be the answerer of prayer? To be worthy of worship. He allowed people to worship him and called people to in the healthiest sense of that word worship. He claimed to be the truth and the life. I am the way, the truth and the life. Those are totally unique statements that only Jesus has said about himself. He claimed all authority. He said, all authority has been given to me where? On heaven, or in heaven and on earth. Claimed all authority. He claimed in one to be essence with God. These are unique powers and unique claims. So here's the first option, considering what Jesus said. And this is that Jesus is exactly who he claimed to be. That is Lord, the Son of God, God himself. First of all, because he claimed it, which draws attention to himself. He claimed to be God. Secondly, he presented proof to be God. Someone walks down the street and says, hi, I'm God. First, I'm probably going to be somewhat dismissive, but if he does something right there that only God could do, stop the hurricane or the tropical storm passing over Hawaii, that might be a start. Jesus calmed the winds and the waves. Do a godlike thing. Jesus did godlike things. He presented proof for being God. In John chapter 5, Jesus says this about his own power. John chapter 5, verse 36. He says, I have testimony weightier than that of John, for the works that the Father has given me to finish, the very works that I am doing, testify that the Father has sent me. So he says, look at what I'm doing. Not just believe me, but look at what I'm doing. And that's the power of the miracles as we looked at them. He expected and allowed examination of proof. That's why we read from John 20, told Thomas, hey, touch my hands, my wrists, my side. He invited people to investigate. He didn't say, hey, the door's closed, come back at 5, and then never show up. He always invited people. Look, everything was out in the open. No hidden miracles, no mystery things that you just had to go along with. Everything was out in the open. And then he convinced others he was God. Right after doubting Thomas touched his side and touched his wrist, Thomas fell down and said, my Lord and my God. That's exactly who Jesus was claiming to be. And Jesus said, blessed are you, Thomas, for this statement, but blessed are those who believe after you who have not seen this evidence. Option number one is that Jesus was exactly who he claimed to be, the Son of God. Here's the only other two possible options, but they're extremely uncomfortable. And this is where Jesus is getting rid of anyone patronizing him. He either is Lord, as he claimed to be, or he's a liar. Which means he knowingly and willfully lied about his identity, ability, and deity. He's just going around lying all the time. I'm the Son of God. I can raise the dead. I can forgive sins. He was just going around lying in every situation with every person. Inner circle, with his own mother, with his own family, just constantly lying. He lied to his family, closest friends, most devoted followers, and religious leaders. You have to believe that he was a blatant hypocrite for lying, but yet calling people to speak the truth. It also means he instilled a false hope in his followers, or set up future followers, his apostles, to be tortured and killed for their lies. Well, here's the problem with that option. There's no evidence Jesus profited from lies. If someone believes that's what he was doing. He never made money, he never got rich, never sold a bunch of books or made a DVD or got a Netflix series after him. He lived homeless on purpose. He lived the very life he taught. Sacrificial, loving, kind. And would a liar have the lasting influence Jesus did? I always cite this example, but years ago, Oprah Winfrey had a man on her show, had written a book called A Million Little Pieces, where he talked about his life story, which was absolutely amazing. Well, it turned out a few years later that he had made it all up. That he convinced her, and she had a book club at that time, and she was greatly upset, and rightfully so. She called him back on the show and said, hey, you tell people what you did, and he lied. He just disappeared. His book sales plummeted because we don't follow liars. They write a book and they're found to plagiarize. They're done. Your life is over as far as being credible anymore. But Jesus convinced and convinces others today he was telling the truth. He was tortured and killed for his own lies. You have to believe that if he was a liar. Liars don't suffer punishment for lies. They tell the truth once the pressure comes. Jesus never did that. You have Jesus' miracles, prophetic fulfillments, and resurrection. There's simply no room for him being a liar, but you don't have any room for him just being a good moral teacher. He's either Lord, or you got to say, well, he's a liar. But there's not even real way to even entertain that thought for very long. They just didn't tell the truth. You keep going back to this being exactly who he claimed to be. Great writer Kenneth Scott Latourette, historian of Christianity at Yale University, years ago made this point about Jesus and his identity. Latourette said this, it's not his teachings which make Jesus so remarkable. It's not his teachings, although these would be enough to give him distinction. It is a combination of the teachings with the man himself. The two cannot be separated. It must be obvious to any thoughtful reader of the gospel records that Jesus regarded himself and his message to be inseparable. In other words, you just can't cherry pick, well, okay, I want to go with, well, Jesus said don't judge, and he said to love your neighbor, and I'll just going to go with those two, and I'll just follow that. Jesus always connected what he taught to who he was. He has the right to tell you these things. He has the right to tell you how to live and how to think and operate with other people and with his Father, because he is Lord, the Son of God. He never just said, hey, I got great ideas and I wrote a book of the top 10 things to do. He always connected teachings to his identity, and that's what Latourette is saying. Here's the only other option left. He's either Lord, or he's a liar, or he's a lunatic. Lunatic is the old school word for you're out of your mind. Which means this is what you got to believe. This is what you're left with if you don't accept him as Lord, and you say, well, liar's a little strong. He hadn't been out of his mind, mentally deranged. Which means Jesus just thought he was God. You have to believe that. You have to believe that Jesus was mentally ill or suffering from severe megalomania of some kind to claim that he was God all the time. You'd have to believe that he suffered maybe from multiple personality disorder, being just a carpenter's son but thinking he's the Son of God. You have to believe that Jesus was paranoid and schizophrenic, escaping reality through invented identity. Again, Jesus narrowed down the possibilities. He's not just a good teacher. He's either Lord, or you have to think he lied about everything, or he just was mentally deranged to say all these things like he could forgive sins if he really couldn't. The options get very narrow. But here's the problem with him being mentally deranged or a lunatic. There's no evidence Jesus had any kind of mental disorder. Jesus is considered the most influential person in world history, even by atheists. Everybody knows who Jesus is. They may not accept him as Lord, they may not follow him, but they know who he is, and they know the book that writes about him or he's written in. Even the book itself makes people uncomfortable if they see you walking with us sometimes. It either draws some people or makes others uncomfortable. Delusional people do not command the influence Jesus has. If someone's out of their mind, you kind of work with them a little bit and you kind of want to get away a little bit, or you're not sure what to do. Jesus constantly drew people to him instead of pushing them away because they thought he was crazy. Delusional people are not the center of the best-selling book of all time, which is the Bible. You have the miracles, the prophetic fulfillments, again, the resurrection. To think Jesus was just a lunatic, there's just no room for that either. So the only three options left for Jesus are Lord, liar, or lunatic. Branson Alcott, years ago, he said this about the power of Jesus convincing the world that he was exactly who he claimed to be. He said, "Today I feel I could say as Christ did, I and the Father are one." He said, "I could say that, I and the Father are one." But the difference is this: Christ got the world to believe him. I guarantee if I started saying I was the Son of God, or I could forgive sins, or I'm going to perform a miracle on Ricardo, Brian would probably come up and gently escort me back to the back and do some de-escalation and do everything he talked about. Because you're not going to believe it, even though you like John Mulligan, you're not going to believe that something's happened to John. Let's get him some help. You'd have great compassion on me, but you would gently escort me out the building. But Jesus got the world to believe that he was exactly who he claimed to be. Here's the conclusions concerning Jesus' identity. First of all, one cannot be neutral. With Jesus, you can't move your mental shift handle into neutral and have any kind of connection to him that's acceptable. He will not just be a great teacher or a great world leader or a nice man that spoke great platitudes. He didn't leave that option to you if you read what he said. He's either the Son of God or he is a liar or a lunatic, which simply means Jesus must either be accepted or rejected. And that's why people either run to Jesus or they run from Jesus. There's some that will see the Bible in your hand or see that you're a Christian and they'll want to know more about it. Hey, where do you go to church? Or, that's good, man, I appreciate the way you dealt with a coworker. I couldn't have done that. And they're kind of drawn to how you do things. And they appreciate when they hear you want to pray for them, and they're willing to hear you talk about Jesus because they're drawn, or else people will run from Jesus. When Jesus is talked about in a conversation, they'll kind of dip out, as my students say, because it makes them uncomfortable. Or they'll start challenging, or they'll say they watched a TikTok video or a YouTube video where someone said this about Jesus, and they get very uncomfortable and very quickly because Jesus makes them uncomfortable. And Jesus said, that's fine. That's what he does. The religious leaders ran from Jesus. They did not like what he had to say. So Jesus can only be accepted or rejected, not anywhere in between where it's neutral. Jesus gave proof allowing only one credible conclusion. He is the Son of God. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That is his only option. In John 14, verse 11, he says, either believe me based on what I say or believe me based on the evidence. Accept me or reject me. That's all someone can do, but don't ever be in the middle. Don't ever be neutral or allow someone else to think neutrality is okay with Jesus. It's simply not a conclusion he allowed and accepted. Well, what does that mean for us as we conclude today? It means all the things that we sang. over every thought, over every word. Lord, reign in me. When the evil one comes, it might be as soon as 15 minutes after you leave this service, or tonight or tomorrow. Your challenge is to let the Lord reign in you, because the evil one will attack everything he's always attacked before in your life. And you'll have to decide who reigns, who rules in my life. The one who hates me, which is the devil, or the one who died for me, which is the Son of God. As Paul said, how could I do anything else? He is Lord of all. And that will be a battle sometimes. And we'll battle all our life making him Lord, but he will accept no other position. And if you fail, get right back up and say, I will make you Lord again. I'll never give up with this struggle. Because you are the Son of God. And I believe in you, or I will die in my sins. Where else could I go? You have the words of life, as Peter said. We're going to sing a song to encourage us to continue to make Jesus as Lord. That's what we confessed. We confess with our mouth, Romans 10:10, Jesus as Lord. We will be forgiven. Make sure he stays as Lord all the days of your life, and that's why we assemble together.